Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, this heat wave, what a great time to talk about energy and energy sources. We'll do that first, and then coming up, Fred Anton and Gene Barr, our little business roundtable. What do you expect from Pennsylvania Newsmakers? Well, we'll tell you as soon as we air this note.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, that looked like a video and not a note, but what do you expect? Hey, at any rate, Terry Fitzpatrick joins me. He's the president and CEO of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. And he used to have something to do with regulation, right?
I spent a lot of time in government. I was with the PUC. You're correct, Terry.
Yep, the Pennsylvania Utilities Committee. Hey, did you miss those days at all? It's kind of fascinating work, isn't it?
It is, but I'm happy to still be involved in those issues with the Energy Association.
Yeah, well, great. All right, look, Pennsylvania has been a source of multiple types of energy throughout its long history. This is a good time, I think, to sort of talk about the different energy sources, and maybe we can get, the future for some, and some obviously not. The future's not as bright. I'm thinking of coal, and that's emerged in the presidential campaign, as you and I were talking
Correct.
Before we started to do the show. Donald Trump has said to restore it. Is that possible? I don't know. It seems less likely that it will ever get back to its old point as one of Pennsylvania's leading industries. But go through a couple of let's talk about some energy sources. You start.
Well, the energy sources change over time. If you look back in history, it doesn't remain static. New sources come on, have certain advantages in the market or now within their environmental qualities, and that leads to some changes. When you think about Pennsylvania, the first thing I think about is coal, maybe because my ancestors came from Ireland here, to mine coal. But coal was very big, fueled the Industrial Revolution. Now I think natural gas is emerging as the dominant source. A couple reasons for that, of course, hydraulic fracturing, releasing all of that gas from the shale region, as well as it has environmental benefits as well. It doesn't emit as much carbon when it's burned, particularly for producing electricity. So natural gas is on the upswing. Of course, we also have nuclear power plants here in Pennsylvania. I think we have the second most nuclear power plants next to Illinois in the country. So nuclear is also a big source of energy. And oil drilling started here in western Pennsylvania. Yeah. So what a rich history we have with energy.
Yeah, I mean, most of us don't even think about oil, but you're right. Back in the day when I taught Pennsylvania history, I would point that out. And more and more, there's obviously a debate about the environmental quality. And let me just ask you this question about coal. I mean, we had, if I get my history right, anthracite coal up in the Northeast, Lackawanna, Luzerne. We have bituminous out in the Southwest. One's hard coal, one's soft coal. And we talk about clean coal, and that was on everybody's mind. Do you think they can ever be restored, given the concern that it gets expressed about the environmental issues relating to it? It's not going to be where it was in the late 19th, early 20th centuries.
Hard to imagine that, I think, right now, with the way the economics are going and with the way the environmental policy is going, too. Concern about carbon emissions. Certainly won't go back to that. I think there is some debate about exactly how much its use will diminish in the future. And as you said, it is a big issue being talked about even in the presidential campaign. Yeah,
that's unusual to have, a specific issue highlighted the way this issue. Right. I actually thought it would be natural gas, and the debate over the Keystone XL pipeline, and that moved center stage for a while, and then of course Donald Trump has moved coal. His campaign has been out in western Pennsylvania in particular, making a big deal of that. All right, let's focus a little bit on natural gas. We've talked about that before. You go across the northern tier of our state, New York, Pennsylvania, actually somewhat along Route 80, maybe a little north of it.
Right.
Come down the Appalachian Mountains, under Allegheny. Actually, I saw some maps, couple of some drilling going on actually in a sliver of Allegheny County around a green.
Right. Correct.
geography is expanding beyond that very much, that geography?
Well, that's where the resources are. It tends to track generally where some of the coal resources are, in fact, as well. So that's where the resources are, that's where the drilling is, and in some cases now you're having natural gas electric generating plants being built in proximity to that. Of course, you also have the coal cracker plant,
right,
in western Pennsylvania. That's because of that location of where the shale gas is and where some of the infrastructure is as well.
All right, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about how the price has affected the output in the petitions for new wells. Price of natural gas is down. They're not, the hiring boom that you and I talked about over the years seems to have diminished a bit. We'll get to that and a couple of other subjects after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, now celebrating 100 years as the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Terry Fitzpatrick is my guest. He's the president and CEO of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, and we were chatting about natural gas. It's turned out to be a big energy producer in our state. The price has fallen. The output seems to be down. That means less revenue for the state. Am I correct so far?
Well, the number of new wells that are being drilled is down. I don't think the output is down because those rigs that we have are very productive in terms of turning out the gas. So we're producing a lot of gas.
Okay. But the price is down, and the expansion isn't what it was a couple of years ago because of the decline in the price, right?
I think that's correct, yes.
Okay. But who knows what the future holds? You know, prices of these things can change on
the market. Prices go up and down, and supply responds to those price signals, yes.
Yeah, great point. All right, let's talk about something you and I have chatted about over the years, renewable energy. Where does that stand in our state?
Well, renewable energy has a big part to play, and it has probably a bigger part to play in the future. That is being driven largely by the climate debate, the concern over carbon emissions. So really in Pennsylvania and throughout the country, you have efforts to produce more renewable energy, to have that be a part of the mix. One of the issues is how far can we go with that? Yeah. You know, how far can renewable energy sources go in displacing other types of energy? There are some folks with respect to fossil fuels who are saying keep it in the ground. We don't need any of it. We can go to all renewables. I don't think if you look at neutral sources by people who really study this and recognize what we need to keep ourselves going as a country and to maintain some balance between environmental concerns, but also economic development, having good jobs for people. We need some kind of balance there. I think when you look at it that way, and even projections by nonpartisan groups like the Energy Information Administration, fossil fuels are going to be around at least until 2050 or beyond. And they're going to be, frankly, they're going to be the backbone of our energy sources going out that far.
Is what going on is that we're using energy sources that some environmentalists, let's be candid, would like to see replaced, but we're going more to energy sources that are less harmful, let me put it that way, to the environment, all things being equal. Is that what as you pointed out with natural gas, emits less, it's less of a problem than coal, correct?
Correct. So natural gas has a part in all of this, but there are some folks who recognize that as far as you can see ahead, natural gas is going to be a big part of our energy mix. There are other folks who would like us to try to go to all renewables. The problem with renewables, one of the problems is that they're intermittent sources. You know, you can get energy when the sun shines or when the wind blows, but how do you keep, especially with electricity, how do you keep it going so that we have energy when we need it?
Right.
Because one of the big technical problems that has always been here with electricity is you cannot store it economically on a large scale. So you need to be producing it as you're consuming it.
Right.
Those sources can't do that. So to try to make up for that involves a lot of extra cost, and it's not clear exactly to what extent we can rely on renewables. Certainly they have a part in the mix, but if you think that we're going to get by with all renewables, we don't have the technology to do that now, certainly in any kind of way where it's economically viable.
All right, let me ask you one more question before I let you go. Is there any activity, you follow this very closely, I don't see any activity in the Pennsylvania legislature that's sort of earth-shaking or, you know, transformative in the energy area. Do you? Is there anything going on that you could cite? Now, the legislature is back for the fall. You know, it's the election coming up. They don't usually do a lot of big things anyway. Is there anything percolating along there that our viewers ought to be aware of?
Well, I think there are constantly bills in the legislature with regard to renewables, with regard to how much of our energy we're going to get. We have requirements that we have to get a certain percentage, 18% by 2021. There's constant debates about whether we ought to up that, whether there should be more solar in the mix. So those have been fairly constant. But we really, when you look at our energy sources in PA, we have a mixture of market conditions as well as policy initiatives in the legislature. So those debates are continuing.
All right, thanks for coming in. All right, coming up next, Fred Anton, Gene Barr, a little business roundtable. We'll talk a little business policy, a little, what else? Politics, of course. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit betterwithcoal.com.
Welcome back. Now we have our popular business roundtable with Gene Barr. He's sitting across from me, as is Fred Anton. Gene, of course, is president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, and Fred Anton is CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. All right, guys, let's branch out and do 4 or 5 things. I'll start with you, Gene. The Kathleen Kane saga looks like it's over. She, she was convicted of 9 criminal counts, felony perjury, the most serious. She gets sentenced. We've had 3 attorneys general in 6 weeks. Bruce Beamer just confirmed, a Democrat, but has apparently a great reputation.
Unanimously
going to
confirmed.
take over. Yep. Yeah, say something about that.
Hopefully the saga's over. I mean, we've got to get this behind us. It has been an absolute disaster, as you note, along with the other things that have happened. And it's just not good for this Commonwealth to have that. So hopefully this will be put behind us. As you note, the new Attorney General seems to have strong confidence from the Senate, as witnessed by a unanimous confirmation. So let's get all this behind us and move forward.
Yeah, Fred, go ahead.
What's going on here? For a Democratic governor and a Senate controlled by Republicans to unanimously, something is going on behind the scenes. What I strongly suspect is that they did not want to leave Bruce Castor in charge for any period of time, particularly with those porno emails and ready to name people in those porno emails. And also there's some other very sensitive issues that are still pending, like whether they advance the prosecutions of the 3 Penn State administrators, Graham Spangler. That still has some open end. So, and I thought it was very interesting, Tony Williams wrote a letter to the Senate and said, what's going on here. I'm not voting because I don't know what's motivating the rapid action in confirming Beamer.
What Fred's talking about, just a little high point, Kathleen Kane's replacement was, as acting Attorney General, was Bruce Castor. He's a Republican who was a county commissioner and a former DA in Montgomery County. He was her pick to be the number 2 person in the Attorney General's office. And I think there was some sense by Governor Wolf and others that they wanted to get their own person in there, not Kathleen Kane. So I got that about right?
I think that's right. And I think, he stood up and said, I'm kind of, I'll paraphrase, the absolute best person for this job. I think his title was Solicitor General or something like that. It's been a bizarre few weeks. So as we say, hopefully this is all behind us after we get through the sentencing of the former Attorney General.
Well, we have one other issue that Fred's points out that's very, very big, and that's the investigation by Doug Gansler. He was hired by Kane. He's a former Attorney General in Maryland. He found hundreds of individuals who received or sent these pornographic emails, as Fred points out. The disposition of them could be very important to the careers of a lot of people. Yes?
Absolutely,
no?
yes. And some of them are other law enforcement officials. Some of them, I believe, based on news reports, are undercover agents. So this could be very ugly as we move forward.
All right, Fred, let's turn to another subject. We have, not arguably, one of the most important U.S. Senate races in the country. Let's do a quick update. We've got Pat Toomey seeking a second term, being challenged by Katie McGinty. The average of the polls show McGinty with a slight lead. This is a hot race, huge national attention. Take it.
Yes. Well, the Senate now is 54 Republicans, 46 Democrats. There are 7 or 8 seats, all with either Republican incumbents or high-profile Republicans. The Democrats must win 4 of them to make it 50-50, or 5 of them to make it 51-49. So
big deal.
It's a big deal, and depending, many of these states are states where Clinton might run strong, and they're all regarded as toss-ups. Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, Florida, they're all regarded as toss-ups.
All right, let's go to a break. Gene, I want to continue on this, and we come back. I want to, the commercials, you can't, every day, I see a new, this could
It's not even Labor Day.
Yeah, it's not even Labor Day. This could end up, I think it was $40 million at Casey. Bob Casey won re-election in 2012. The 2 candidates spent that. We're going to continue with this in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, advancing quality, improving lives. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
I'm chatting with Fred Anton and Gene Barr for our Business Roundtable. Okay, Gene, let's pick up. We've got this hugely important Senate race. Down ballot, a possible problem. If one or either of the candidates win big, the straight party voting, as Fred points out,
it becomes a concern. And look, let's be honest. We all talk, and the populace talks about the fact they like somebody who reaches across the aisle. Here in Pat Toomey, you've got a guy who's done that, who's been endorsed by Michael Bloomberg, Gabby Giffords, and obviously it's on the gun control issues where he reached across to work with Manchin of West Virginia. This is one of probably only really, other than the presidential, 2 competitive federal races in this state, which is the 8th congressional as well as this one. Everything else is just about over. You hate to say that, but those are really the only 2 competitive, and the U.S. Senate is going to be spending a lot of money. So as you noted before we left, get ready. particularly after Labor Day. You're going to see
Fred,
a
we can't
ton of
see
stuff.
enough commercials, can we?
You know, the standard for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania is for a Republican senator to win, and they have won most of the time in the last century at least, and Arlen Specter was the model. Run to the left in the general election. Now, unfortunately, Pat Toomey has an identity of being an extreme right-winger. He opposed Arlen on the basis that Arlen was a rhino, Republican in name only. One of the difficulties here is the conservative wing of the Republican Party is holding Pat to a higher standard than they have previously held.
Yeah, Gene's shaking his head. That's a good point. Go ahead.
And the thing is, they hold them to a higher standard. Arlen was afraid to say anything about gun control. Any moderation on gun control, the conservatives are holding against Pat Toomey. Any moderation on not supporting Donald Trump. Now, those are two areas where he's been very, very discreet.
And we didn't get to this business of he's walking that narrow, you know, he wants the Trump supporters, particularly the blue-collar workers. On the other hand, he has to win the Philly suburbs, right? And that a different kind of voter there. Go ahead.
Absolutely, it is. And, you know, I think early on, you know, the gun control issue certainly played well, particularly in the Philadelphia suburbs. But look, it's going to be very interesting, and he's in an unenviable position here of trying to do that. In reality, I think that most people have been surprised. I think, as Fred said, they've said, "Oh, gee, you know, Club for Growth, et cetera." I don't think he has been an ultra-right senator. I have not seen that. He's been, in many cases, arguing from a pragmatic basis in terms of reducing the debt. Has said we probably need new revenues, but we've got to cut in certain places. It's been a very pragmatic approach to government.
We got about a minute left, but Fred, this election has turned pretty nasty. I mean, the negative advertising. Wow. I mean, and as he points out, we're not even at Labor Day yet. Well, when we air this program, it'll be just before Labor Day.
I have heard recently that Koch brothers are considering weighing into this race, that there's been some improvement in some of the other Senate races, and the Koch brothers are going to get in here behind Pat.
Yeah. Well, here's the story. Go ahead. You want to?
No, I was going to say Ohio. To go to Fred's point, Ohio seems pretty good. Portman seems to be doing pretty well right now. So
yeah, he does. He has. We're talking about Rob Portman, the senator seeking re-election. He has. All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to talk about the legislature. We're out of time. They're only in about 9 or 10 days. But next month, you guys come back. I want to talk about what's going on in the legislature. We'll get into the business agenda. I have your word on that?
Sounds
You're coming
good.
back?
We can
Fred,
do that.
You're coming back.
No, we can do that.
All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.